These people who are deceived by gold dust coming through the air vents at Bethel. Imagine how deceived they are going to be when a false prophet comes along with really convincing signs and wonders. That's a scary thought. So that's the first one, the obsession, with false signs and wonders. But point number two, which has contributed to this whole emphasis on signs and wonders and the yearning to perform greater miracles than Jesus. And that is that we should be able to perform supernatural works just by default. By your Christian setting, you can perform signs and wonders and perform great works. And here's an example of a really, deceiving individual who teaches this.
The kingdom requires demonstration. Now, some people think that the reason that Jesus performed his miracles is because he was trying to prove his messiahship, his claim to be the Messiah. But that's not true. That's not why he did it. He wasn't trying to prove that to anybody, because he wasn't there to prove that he was the Messiah. That wasn't the purpose. He was there to show us what it looks like when a human being, under the power of the Holy Spirit, is carrying with them the dominion of the kingdom in a fallen world. This is what Jesus was saying. This is what it looks like. Let me say it this way. Jesus didn't heal the sick to prove that he could. He healed the sick to prove that you could. He didn't perform miracles to show what he could do. He performed miracles to show what you can do. He was our example.
Right, so what can I say? How can anybody actually believe a word this man says when he speaks rubbish like this? Let's read. I'd rather believe the apostles of Jesus, wouldn't you? So let's have a look at John 10:22-27. At that time, the Feast of Dedication took place at Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was walking in the temple in the Colonnade of Solomon. So the Jews gathered around him and said to him, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly." Jesus answered them, "I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name bear witness about me. But you do not believe because you're not among my sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." In other words, Jesus was saying that his works proved that he was the Messiah. Not everyone was walking around performing the same miracles as Jesus, and so it became very clear that this is the Messiah. And those who believed him, well, they are his sheep. So just there as well, when he says, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me," that doesn't mean you sitting in the mornings in your quiet time, listening to the voices in your mind or your heart and trying to decipher which, is this God or is this my own thoughts? That's the meaning of this text. His sheep follow him. They believe him. They believe that he is the Messiah, and they believe his teachings. And that's what we as sheep do. We believe he is the Son of God, he is the Messiah, and we obey his teachings. And John 20:30-31. Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but these are written so that you may believe that you can perform the same works as Jesus, and even greater works. No, that's not what it says. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. So there's no way to gently put it. Daniel Calendar is lying, and how somebody can get this wrong is quite remarkable, actually. I can only put it down to some sort of delusion or narcissistic disorder, but it's very clear that Jesus didn't come to perform works to show us what we could do. But some will argue, and they will go to obviously John 14:12. "Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes in me will do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do, because I am going to the Father." And greater works there refers primarily to the scope and the effect that the gospel would have. It's not greater miracles, greater works in general. And if you think about it, the conversion of 3,000 people on the day of Pentecost, and the disciples being filled with the Holy Spirit, and Peter standing up and preaching boldly, 3,000 in one day, it's a greater work. See, that's the scope and the effect of the gospel. So that's referring to the creation of the church, the worldwide spread of the gospel, And of course, I mean, just the indwelling Holy Spirit. So, um, you know, the relationship that we as believers, New Testament believers, have with God the Father, that we can come boldly to the throne of grace in time of need, is quite incredible. Just think, in the Old Testament, they were under the law. They didn't have the privileges that we have as New Testament believers. So it's greater because we can reveal the finished work of Christ on the cross and preach the gospel. So if you want to perform greater works, preach the gospel. It really is that simple. And let God take care of the rest of the miraculous. And isn't it amusing, actually, that those who claim to be able to perform greater works than Jesus can't even perform the same works or lesser works, or in fact, in reality, any works, anything. Todd White stretching the legs, doing his leg lengthening trick, that's not the same work. That's not a miracle. That's not a healing. Gold dust through the air vents, that's not a sign and a wonder. So they can't even perform the same works, let alone walk on water. And I know some Bethelites, there was an instance, not sure if it's still on the internet, but I believe it was Kevin Dedman who spoke about a group of Bethelites and trying to walk on water. And I know some of them have got into trying to stick coins on walls and all kinds of things. And you know they try and raise the dead. But this is what drives these people, is false teachings like this, that we can perform the same and the greater works as Jesus. So point number 3,